Hello, everybody. I'm Javon, and I share everything that I know about emotional well being and healing. And today, I want to share with you what I know about emotional reactivity, what it is, why it's exhausting you, and how to reclaim your energy. But first, please allow me to introduce myself. Like I said, I'm Javon Gray, and I help folks go from letting their entire mood and attitude be dictated by what happened to them to becoming a force that dictates what will happen next. Um, it's really all about not taking control over your life, but about how you can stop feeling so helpless, right? And like in general, without direction. Um, what we say around my camp is that we don't cope, we heal. That is what our objective is. That's where our direction is, right? And so all of the things that we do inside of my camp, including anything that I would encourage you to do here on A Moment to Heal, is going to be related to healing. And I say that because many people feel like healing is this thing that it always feels good, or that it's always supposed to be like a massage, like it's supposed to be a soul massage. And sometimes you'll have stuff like that happen, but for the most part, you um, work to regain all of the energy, like we'll talk about later on in this series, but regain the energy that you're losing by constantly trying to keep all of this pain and emotion, all these past experiences trapped inside of you. And the things that are stored with pain will always, you could probably hear me better now, but the things that are stored with pain will always come up with pain. And so it doesn't always feel the best up front, but you notice the difference, right? You feel that relief. You get to the point where you're not looking to feel like the like itching, that like when you finally get that scratch in and that itch that you have for a long time, like you don't really need that because you haven't had that itch in a long time, right? So that is what healing looks like. And so back to emotional reactivity. We're gonna get back to that after I cover with you that the Exist membership is something that I've started actually in the past couple of weeks. It is a free membership where I host my any challenges, any programs that I do during the month. And it is also where I host a lot of my courses and stuff, but it is a community in which many women are healing. And there is a free 3-day challenge that's inside of it now. If you want to join, it's www.school.com/exist, EXIST, and that link will be located in this post and in the comment section so that you can go and join there. Like I was saying, today we are going to unpack what emotional reactivity is, why you feel so drained, and most importantly, how you can reclaim that energy. And this is not something that you have to do far off down the line. This is not something that you gotta get before your 40th birthday or your 50th birthday. It's not something that it's gonna take you a year to do. It's something that you can start right now. So first, I want to start with what emotional reactivity is. And so emotional reactivity, it happens when your mind reacts instantly to an event, and that reaction is solely based on old patterns and unprocessed emotions. It's kind of like, it feels like a knee jerk. It feels unstoppable. It feels uncontrollable. And so instead of responding thoughtfully or responding from a, a place of understanding, right? We go into an autopilot. So I feel like some of the more like relatable examples that is happening is, snapping at someone and feeling guilty, snapping at someone and feeling relief, right? Like you did this in order to get someone or something to stop, right? Like that's why you honked your horn at the person who cut you off, right? You did that action because an event happened. You said, okay, they cut you off, right? You were trying to get somewhere, first of all. You were doing your thing. You had your eye on your target, right? Which was going past this intersection. Somebody cut you off. And the first response that you have, no matter if it's just a thought or if it's this big blow up, this right? All of that is emotional reactivity. Now, what people usually want to work on is if it is causing them extreme emotion. So that's why we usually use an extreme example, but any reaction to what is going on, especially when their reaction is a rejection of what just happened, right? Like this shouldn't be happening. Or like this, like, why is this happening to me, right? There's like dread about it happening. Those are all clues that that reactivity was involved in this. So most of our suffering doesn't come from what is happening, right? So it's not, you don't suffer in the car because people don't drive how or people are driving, right? How they're driving. It's not even necessarily the case that you suffer in the car because people are not driving how you want them to drive. You suffer in the car, for those of us who have road rage, here and there or every day. You suffer in the car, not because of those things, but because of the fact that when those things happen, you internally are rejecting them, but they've already happened, right? And what has happened is inevitable. And it's one of those, the hardest things to, because it feels real. It feels like it should, you feel right, right? Right? Like it's that level of righteousness. Like you feel like this is not how it's supposed to be. And you really believe that you can't see anything else, right? And so that's why all the cuss words start spewing out your mouth. That's why you fuming and, raising the temperature in the car, because you hit your 15th red light in a row or whatever, or the person in front of you is not driving as fast as they could. This is why I always take it home. What if we do a work example? But this is why, you get so frustrated with your colleagues who you feel like never help you, right? It is just a thing like that. That is just a thing that occurred, right? Like you were doing your assignment, right? I mean, I've mostly worked in the nursing field. I've mostly worked in a clinical field, period, for most of my years, most of my working years. And there's a lot of like bias and judgment that goes on. There's a lot of expectations about what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, how you're supposed to respond. And some of that is meant to reinforce this like object of teamwork, right? This like when we do things this way, when we work with each other in this way, then if something happens that's an emergency or that requires our attention and immediate response, that we could all work cohesively, right? But then a lot of it winds up turning into or just having that as a goal. That's the duality of hospital life. But even having that as a goal can cause a lot of comparisons and what in the world is the name of that word? Competition. Like that competitiveness, that like need to be better, that ambition, that drive to like get it right, and that fear of getting it wrong. And all of that is a big recipe for um, uh, people getting their feelings hurt, for people being in their feelings, for people wearing their wounds on the outside, for people causing other people new wounds. And so, and again, even when there's suffering that has occurred by me, I was sitting with a colleague that I used to work with. We met at this coffee house a few days ago, and we worked in a pretty intense and toxic environment. And when I say toxic environment, I just mean that a lot of the folks, they're like, it was a part of the culture to for folks to be hard, to come down hard on one another if there was a mistake that was made. It was a matter of like trying to foster empathy and sometimes really successfully fostering empathy and caring for the folks who we were caring for, but then a lot of like, but not you. You don't get that. Not as my colleague. I don't owe you that. I ain't here to be nice to you. I'm not here to support you. And it was that kind of environment. And so one of the things that we talked about was how she had felt like, and this is someone who is at the retirement stage of her career as a physician. And she was just like, one of the worst days that I have had in my life wasn't even, she said it wasn't a bad outcome, right? So like, it wasn't like a mom died or had to have, or had like a really bad injury. It wasn't like a baby died or had a bad injury. It was like, it was a day when there was so much contention and malice, right? Between the physician team, really specifically her and her decision making, nursing staff, where, the nurses, one nurse who was in charge was rallying the other nurses. She felt like everyone was against her decision to make a decision about whether or not this person who was laboring should have a C-section, that type of thing. And I think that speaks loads to this point, that the suffering doesn't come from what happens, but it comes from the story that we tell ourselves. Because even if not only was the worst day in her career that she could remember, not only was that more related to what was going on between her and this other staff, but especially when there is some contention between you and another group or you and another person, you don't really know what their true feelings are. It's hard to really accept and be aware of that communication, especially when you feel like it is negative, or if it causes you any shame or guilt. And so it was just a lot about, it speaks to the fact that, first of all, those were people who were saying words. You know what I'm saying? Like, they were saying words, and they might have been typing things. They might have been moving some things around in the room, or, you know what I mean? But most of it was about the words that they were saying, right? That made her day, her whole day, like out of, I think 40 or so years of her career, that one day it made her feel like it was the worst day because people were saying words. And I know that it seems like an oversimplification, but it is true. And the words that they were saying, the fact that they were saying them to one another as well, and that they kept repeating them to her in different ways, she internalized those things. She internalized those words, and she told herself a story about what that meant. Maybe about her, maybe about her judgment, maybe about her position, as a physician, working with nurses, and what that meant about her day. It was people saying words, and that completely shifted her whole day. And so, that is, my what I think about emotional reactivity, right? So in terms of why it's exhausting, so for many reasons, right? Because words that someone says to you, maybe it was 20 years ago, maybe it was 10 years ago, maybe it was 5 minutes ago. When people say things, do things, and you hurt because of it, and especially when you don't fully feel those emotions and you start to tell yourself something about what it is that happens, that's what creates trauma. That's what, that's what creates trauma. And then when you don't fully express them, or not express them, when you don't fully feel them, when you don't fully feel the emotions that brings up for you, when you check out of an interaction and you're not fully there, then you store a lot of that inside of you. You store a lot of that pain. You avoid feeling it, kind of like we talked about last week. And when you avoid feeling that, you are using energy to keep that down. It was trying to come out of you, right? The pain, the shame, the regret, the doubt, anything that you fail to fully experience, I should say choose to not fully experience, when you are making that decision, whether you're doing it actively or it's occurring protectively, right? In a way that you feel like you're protecting yourself from the full brunt of feeling that emotion. When you do that, you need to use energy to hold that down or hold it wherever you're putting it, right? So that it's not coming up and it's not causing you to feel, I don't know, maybe worse than you do or more of what you feel right now. And so when you're constantly reactive as well, your nervous system will also stay on high alert, right? And it's kind of like, it feels like running a marathon that doesn't have a finish line, right? And you do this, and it's like it's mentally, emotionally, and physically draining. So especially when it comes to the physical, I was just on a call with someone, and it was a consultation call about intrauterine insemination, right? Like she had been through a few providers and felt like, she had to read a book and then look me up and see that I was a provider who had gone through a specific type of training, because she felt like she had these other providers from other systems and practices, and that there were some things about her fertility and tracking that she wasn't aware of until she took this book that's associated with the training that I went through. So she was like, so I want to, go through my next insemination, with someone who's been through this training, because this book has opened my eyes in this and that other way. And so it's like you get to this point where it's like, okay, I found something that I think will work, right? But still holding on to this, like, then she started to express like how she found out on a holiday that, she got her period on a holiday, and she had just tried to inseminate, and it was just like, oh, that was real tough for her. And then she, didn't want this to happen on her birthday. She doesn't know how it's going to be if she tries again and it doesn't work. And it is hard to mentally, physically, and emotionally to want something so badly and to have it completely not be in your control and feel like it's not working and feel like there's something else that you could be doing and And she was just like racked with emotions, like they were like bubbling over for her. And on the call was even like started to cry and everything. I'm like, and so we had this talk about, and so first I had her do this thing that I'm going to show you how to do. But then as I'm like walking her through it, I'm like, like, are you like, relax your butthole? Like, like this is like, you need to do that. Like many of us, especially when we're carrying around some higher level of stress for a longer period of time, we'll do more of that, like clenching. And it's like, like I say multiple times, right? Like I told her to relax her eyebrows. She's like, yeah, it does seem like my eyebrows have been more tense lately. Like, yeah, this is what we do, right? When we are fighting, emotionally, we're fighting internally. Oftentimes we tense up our entire bodies in response to what's going on with us emotionally. And so, she was holding all of that stuff in her body, right? Like physically tense. It's also exhausting because it impacts your relationships, right? So like this pattern, this like forever, the forever marathon, the never ending marathon, it makes it harder to connect with others. It's hard to connect when you're in survival mode, right? Like, because you're more likely to make other people feel unsafe. And when you do that, when other people feel unsafe, they're more likely to disconnect from you. But then too, it's very hard to connect with anyone, like truly see who they are, and not the images that you've been creating for them, not what you have to, what you're putting up real quick because you have other things that are on your mind. Or, maybe you're only paying attention to one aspect or a couple of aspects of them, again, because you got so much going on. It's hard to connect with people when you're in survival mode. And you also can't lead with compassion, right? If you got like all of this chaos going on inside of you. And so that's another way that it drains you. And it's like you're on a hamster wheel of reacting, justifying, and repeating, right? Until you consciously decide to step off or, take a break, right? Whenever I don't know. We don't got to get all into that because we don't got that much more time. But I will say that just really quickly, that whenever you put a goal out in front of you, of any sort, you run on a hamster wheel. Hamster wheel of not just chasing that goal, but chasing what it is that you think you'll get when you reach that goal. And so reclaiming your energy. So the very first step in this path is awareness. And so that's one of the main focuses of Soft 6, which Soft 6 is going off really well. We are 3 days into the challenge on the Soft 6 day 2, and it's really, really going well. But one of the main things that we are focusing on is building this awareness, not only recognizing when you're on autopilot, right? Because it's a most of the time type of thing for most of the population, but it's really helpful if whenever you recognize that you're on autopilot to pause and ask yourself, like, what am I avoiding feeling right now? So like a really good example of this is if it ever occurs to you, like, I'm going to go over and tell them about themselves. Like, I want to make sure that they don't do this thing anymore. Like, I don't like the way that made me feel. Or whenever you decide you want to start establishing a boundary or something like that, it's a good reason. It's a good time to pause and ask yourself, like, because it's a method of distraction. So anytime anytime you are moving to get somebody to stop doing something or something like that, um, just you making that movement, just you saying that thing to them distracts you from feeling what it is that you felt when they did the thing they did. So, like, if somebody uh, comes up to you, I don't know. The only thing that's coming to my mind right now is like, that's why you ugly, right? Or whatever it is. If they look at your shoes and give you a reaction that you don't really appreciate. Um, if they do that and you inside then feel ashamed of your shoes, right? Or um or a better example is if they're really expensive shoes and somebody is like looking at them enviously and you kind of feel guilty or you feel I feel like guilt would be an emotion that you would feel, or pride would be an emotion that you would feel. Um, if you do something or say something to get them to compliment you on your shoes, or if you do something or say something to get them to not make a big deal out of your shoes, then that move that you just did redirects your attention and your energy off of feeling what you just felt, whether that was guilt or whether that was pride, right? So, um, it's really um, so in addition to awareness, the other thing that I'll give you in this call is a way to, when you feel overwhelmed, how the one person who I was speaking to today, who, like I said, the emotions were bubbling up for her when she was doing that, and like she was getting tearful and everything. What was really helpful and centering for her was for her to just lay down on the floor. Is something that I still do. It's something that I've done in a coaching call where I just felt like there was so much stuff going on in my head, and I was like so much. I had I had realized that I had placed so much value on like getting validation, and and then I had a bunch of emotions. I had some stuff in here about like admitting that I had hit some financial goals and just hadn't hit them where I wanted it to, or the money hadn't come from where I wanted it to come from. And I had to admit that. And it was all this stuff that was going on. And I literally just laid down in this coaching session and just said my thing from laying down. But it's super, super helpful for you to get as relaxed as possible whenever you are just feeling overwhelmed. And so I will lay down. I will lay down at home. Wherever I am is better than what happens otherwise. Right? Lay down and feel your emotions instead of, spazzing out, going off on your kids. Lay down and feel your emotions instead of lying to someone about who you are or what it is that you're doing. Lay down and feel your emotions instead of screaming at somebody in an attempt to get them to never disrespect you like that again or whatever. And not saying that you need to let people talk to you however or anything like that, but just that if the only reason why you're doing it, the only reason why you're opening your mouth is to try to protect you, the psychological you, that you get on another hamster wheel if you do that. And so it's about choosing a different response. And you need to create space to make choices that actually align with your divine nature. And so I invite you to reflect. I challenge you to notice moments where you are reacting to life instead of responding to it, right? From a place of understanding. I challenge you to then pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, like, why am I doing this thing this way right now? Like, am I just doing it for me, or am I doing it in relationship to somebody else? Am I doing this for someone else? And so also, if today's conversation resonates with you, I also invite you to join the Exist community. It's designed to build a space. It's designed to be a space built to help you break free from reactivity and to find clarity, right? To deal with your emotions so that you can stop feeling, guilty for taking your breaks, for being you, for living your life, for wearing your shoes, for not making a decision to take someone to a major abdominal surgery, And I just want to close this out by reminding you that you don't have to live at the mercy of your emotions, right? Like, you don't have to sway however other people and the weather and the traffic dictates. And that by doing these things, you build a foundation for swaying in a different way. I will see you next week.